One of the biggest challenges out there for any engineer is getting your mixes to translate outside of your studio, right? You're sitting there, you're mixing in your studio and it sounds super sweet, and then you go out to your car or your friend's house or whatever and it sounds like total dog shit. Well, I'm gonna tell you why I think that's happening to your mixes, and we're gonna do that right now. If your mixes aren't translating outside of your studio, in my opinion, here's the reason. It's the room acoustics that you are battling. So if you're working in a completely untreated space, right, acoustically speaking, you don't have any pads, you don't have any panels or anything like that, you're listening to the room as well as your monitors, right? And that is something you have to comprehend. No amount of equipment is going to fix this issue. This is going to be about paneling your room, getting the panels or getting whatever you can to sort of start taming that sound. I'm not talking about completely deadening the room. I'm talking about simply taming it to a usable point, okay? So I have done both. I've had that Auralex foam pad stuff, and now, as you can see, I have these big broadband panels, and we're gonna talk about those a little bit later. One thing I do wanna warn you guys about the foam stuff, doesn't matter if it's Auralex or whatever, it really primarily only handles high end. So you'll set it up and you'll hear a reduction in high end. But that's not the only thing we're dealing with here. We're dealing with low end, and that is primarily the biggest issue, right? It's that low end of your mixes, the way it sounds in your studio compared to out in the real world, right? So it's that low end that you need to be able to handle. And that's like, it sort of makes me nuts when I see people with all this foam up on the walls. You're like, well, you're killing your high end and you're not dealing with the low end at all, which is the most important part. If you ask me, get bass traps first and then work the high end stuff later. So bass traps are really, really fabulous. You can build them yourself, you can buy them, but don't get the foam ones. It doesn't matter how dense that foam is, it really doesn't do the job you want it to do. Now, as you can see here, I have a bunch of broadband panels. That term broadband means that they do work from the top of the high-end spectrum all the way down to the low-end spectrum, right? So as you can see, I have 10 panels in my room here. So I have these two on the side, one in the corner, one behind my computer, one there, one there, one there, two there, right? And then one directly behind me, okay? So what you need to understand is, like, the sound comes out of my speakers, right? And it's actually, the first point of reflection is that rear wall. So that's why I have that panel right back there. Then it's gonna bounce off of that rear wall, because I only have that one smallish panel back there. Then it's gonna come out and spill over to these two, right? And then it's gonna start, you know, coming back at me through the monitors. But what I'm trying to do is not have any reflections that are coming back at me. So, you know, it's coming out, it's coming here, and then the sound's basically getting absorbed by these two panels. Same thing with this, same thing with this. This little cove that I sit in right here all the time when I'm mixing is really designed for me to be listening to my monitors, only monitors, right? I don't want to hear the room. I don't want to hear the low end of the room. I don't want to hear the high end of the room. I want to hear everything coming out of my monitors, and I want to hear as little of the reflections as possible. The other thing I want to mention too is, like, if you have really big monitors in a completely untreated space, you are just working against yourself with that, okay? One thing I do recommend for anybody who has this issue, if you don't want to go in, you can't put up panels or don't have the money for all the panels, those iLoud micro monitors from IK Multimedia are absolutely great for this kind of a situation. Because of the small form factor of those little speakers, they essentially remove the room from the equation because they move so little air. I know everybody really likes the big monitors because it looks cool and it's totally impressive, I guess. But if you don't know, like when I walk into a studio like that, if I walk into someone's bedroom studio and I see huge honkin' monitors and no paneling or acoustic treatment at all, I'm like, oh no, you know, that's just not, I know your pain. I know the challenges of your studio. So I just want to, you know, I want to remind you guys, low end is the biggest issue in most home studios, and I bet you know what I'm talking about. Your mixes don't translate outside of your studio when it comes to that low end. Of course, high end's going to be a big part of it too, but you know, it's easier to tame high end because those panels are cheap, those foam stuff, but it's essential that you figure out how to tame that low end. Get really good bass traps, the best bass traps that you can buy or make. I'm gonna dig around and hopefully find a link because there's a guy who made a video about really making your own bass traps, which were really, really great. I haven't made them myself, but Vitze from White Sea Studios turned me onto that. And I just, you know, if you want to build your own bass traps, I'll just leave a link below. Otherwise, you guys, subscribers, thank you. Viewers, thank you. Patreon people, thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, if you have comments or questions, leave it in the comment section below. I will answer them as quickly as possible. And that's it. You guys have an awesome day. Peace and love.